Hey everyone, this is Usman from Coding Galore. In this video, we'll draw a paint application in React. As you can see here, I can free draw stuff. I can draw different shapes like arrows, circles, rectangles. I can drag and drop them anywhere I want. I can clear the canvas. I can change the color. So now I can draw with a different color. I can import images. And at the end, I can export an image, and you can see the image right here. So stick around till the end of the video to see how you can make this paint application in React. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can get updates about future videos. Now let's get into it. So the library in question which we will use to build this paint application is Konva, specifically React Konva. We will basically use a lot of React stuff like states and etc. And you will feel like you are building a normal React application, and it won't feel like you are, interacting with the Canvas API at all. It's pretty simple. So right now I've cleared the code so that nothing happens. We'll basically build the application from scratch. So the base component in order to use Konva is the stage component. This component is basically what creates the canvas on the DOM and is used to basically draw on the canvas. And this is a very vital component, and we'll see in a bit how we can use that. And then we have the layer component. The layer component basically creates layers like in any vector illustration software like Adobe Illustrator. You can have different layers, and you can specify that these particular shapes and drawings that I'm making should be in the separate layers, and you can bring the layer top, bottom, etc. But in order to make this tutorial simple, we will only have one layer. Now the way Konva works is that we have different React components, and we can use those React components to basically draw different things on the canvas. So right now you can see that in this particular example, we have imported rectangle, text, circle, and line from Konva, and we have used them as React components inside layer, and we have specified some props like X, Y, width, fill, color, etc. And these shapes are basically being drawn on the canvas. So this is the concept of how we can draw on the canvas, but right now these are static shapes and they serve no purpose. We'll basically write dynamic code which would track our mouse, and based on the mouse cursor and if it is down or up, we will be able to change the X and Y's of the shapes we're drawing and basically build shapes, and you'll see that in the next section. So right now the first thing I want to do, and it's a simple thing, is I want to show a picture on the canvas. So I'm using the image component. I've named it Konva image so that it doesn't coincide with some other type image or something else. So that is why I've named it Konva image. So Konva image takes X, Y, the height and width. So size is basically a constant variable, and that is set to 500 pixels. And I've set the width of and height of the stage or the canvas to be 500. So I've set the width and height of the whatever image I will import to be half the size of what the canvas would be. You can have any arbitrary value there. Now obviously this image is a state, and now I have to load some image in order to show it. What I have here is I have a file input, and this is the file input change handler. What I want is when I upload an image from the file input, that particular image should show in the canvas. How can I do it? Let's see. So basically we would create an URL from url.create object URL, and we would pass the file here so that we can get a URL. Then we would create an image. So we will say const image is equal to new image, and then the size, height, and width should be size divided by 2. The image source should be whatever image URL we just created, and we'll say set image to whatever the image variable we just created. So now if I go here, I import an image. I have the Pikachu image right here. I click on it. Now this particular Pikachu image has been drawn in the canvas, and it happened pretty smoothly. We didn't have to touch the Canvas API at all. We used React state, and we used the React component, and we got an image on the canvas. Pretty smooth. Now let's start the code for exporting the image as well to see what result do we get after we export the image from the canvas. So this is the click handler we have for the export image button. So we'll write our export code here. In order to export an image, we have to pass a ref on the stage component and then use that ref to get the image and then download it. So first we'll pass a ref. I'll say ref is equal to stage ref. Let me create that ref. I'll say here const stage ref is equal to use ref null. Let's assign any type to it. Then here I would say const data URI is equal to stage ref dot current dot to data URL, and then pixel ratio. So pixel ratio is basically the quality I want. So higher the number, the higher the quality of the image would be. I will pass it pixel ratio 3. Then I have a download URI function which I will show at the moment. So basically what it is doing is I'm passing the URI, it is creating a link element, then it is appending it to the body, it is clicking it, and it has the href of whatever the URI we created, and when we click it, it downloads the image, and then we remove the link from the DOM. So that is how you can download an image. Also, I have to provide a name here, so I can say image.png, and now if I, let's say, import an image and I export it, now the image has been exported. Let's see what the result is we got. So the result we got is we have the image here, but all the background is black. Why is that? Ideally, this is a 500 by 500 canvas, so this particular portion should have been there, but it is there, but it's transparent. We don't have a background, so we need to add a background as well. So the way we'll add a background is we'll have a rectangle component. We will set the rectangle component's height and width to be exactly 500 as of this moment, and we'll set its color to white, and that is how we'll get a white background. So let's add that. So this is basically the rectangle component we imported from Konva. We set its x and y to 0 so that it starts from the top left. We set its height and width to the same height and width we assigned to the canvas. Its fill is white, and we gave it an ID because we'll use it later. So now if I import an image, I go to export. Now if I open the image, you can see that now it has the full white background. Now it looks like a proper result we got from the canvas. Pretty cool. Now we've done all the simple stuff. Now let's get into drawing stuff on the canvas. You can do that by using the on-stage mouse down, on-stage mouse up, and on-stage move handlers on the stage component. Now here on the stage component, I have passed 3 event handler methods: on-stage mouse up, mouse down, and mouse move, and basically we'll write the code here based on whatever option we have selected, and we'll be able to draw on the canvas, and we'll see how. So right now you can see that I have a button group, and I click on the buttons and they get selected. So whenever they get selected, a state gets updated, and that state is draw action. So draw action can be anything of the type select, rectangle, circle, scribble, or arrow. So select is basically not drawing. Obviously we'll be able to select and do stuff with it, and we'll look at it at the end. But rectangle, circle, scribble, and arrow are basically different types of things we can draw, and we will basically look at them each one by one. First of all, we'll see how we can draw an arrow because it's very simple. Okay, so basically this is the arrow component right now. I've got the arrow state here, which is currently undefined, so nothing would be shown. But if we have the arrow component, we will display the arrow component. We'll pass it a key, ID, and then points, and I will discuss what points is. Fill is basically the color, stroke is basically the color of the stroke, and stroke width is basically how wide the stroke should be. So points is basically an array of 4 numbers. The first 2 numbers are the coordinates for the starting tail of the arrow, and the other 2 numbers in the array are the coordinates for the ending, that is head of the arrow. So that is how we can make the arrow, and we basically will use the mouse position, and if we have mouse down or up, to basically see where the arrow should go. Let's look at it right now. The code for drawing starts from here when we have the mouse down on the stage. The stage is the canvas. So I'll say if draw action is equal to draw action dot select. Basically I have the select tool selected. I don't want to draw anything, so I'll say return. So this is basically the first thing we need to do. Then I have created a ref here, which is known as isPaint_ref, and we'll basically use it to track if we're actually drawing or not. Whenever we'll place the mouse down, we'll set it to true. Then we'll see in on stage mouse move method, if we have it true, then we want to draw stuff. And on mouse up, whenever I'll release the mouse, I will set it to false. Basically this would be used to track the painting logic. So I'll say isPaint_ref.current is equal to true. Now I'll use the stage ref to get the current coordinates of wherever my mouse is, so that I can place the starting coordinates of the arrow. So this is basically the code for this. I will get the stage ref, which is the ref of the stage. I will use the get pointer position function, which would give me the coordinates for wherever my mouse is right now. So if a mouse is in the middle, it will give me the coordinates of wherever the middle position is, etc. So I've now got the x and y, and I can use these to set the starting coordinates of the arrow. So here I'll say case draw action dot arrow. So I only want to run this particular function or this logic when the arrow option is selected. So I'll say set arrow. I won't set any other option. I'll set the color. So color is basically the state of the color picker I have, and then I have the points property. So here I have to pass 4 points. I've touched the canvas once, so obviously I won't have 4 points, but I will just say x, y, x, y, so that I have at least something there. Right now I have to pass an ID as well, so I'll pass it a dummy ID because we will in the next section draw multiple arrows. Now if I select the arrow option and I click, you can see that I get something. So whenever I would click somewhere, I would get the arrow head at least. That's not what I want to draw an arrow. So now I will shift to the on stage mouse down function, and then I will write the remaining logic there. I want to run the on stage mouse move function when the isPaintRef is true and the select tool is not selected. So let me write the logic for that. So I will say if draw action is equal to draw action dot select or isPaintRef dot current is false, I want to return. Now I'll get the same logic I had for the on stage mouse down function so that I can get the coordinates of wherever I am moving my mouse. So here I'll say case draw action dot arrow, and here I'll say set arrow prev arrow. So I want to get the previous state. I'll spread the prev arrow and I will only change the points. So I'll say I want to have the same coordinates for the tail because obviously the tail would remain the same, and I want to stretch the arrow to wherever my mouse would go. So I will say prev arrow dot points 0, prev arrow dot points 1, and xy. So basically this would keep the tail at the same position, but it would move the head to wherever I have my mouse. So yeah, I've written the logic for the arrow, and now if I go here, and now you can see that I am moving my mouse around, and it is basically whenever I click, it sets the position of the tail, and whenever I move my mouse around, it basically places the head to wherever my mouse is. And the problem is that I have my mouse up. I'm not dragging, but still it is drawing. So I basically want to set the isPaintRef to false when I basically have my mouse up. So here I will just write isPaintRef.current should be false. And now when I would be dragging, only then the arrow would be drawn, otherwise not, as you can see here. Now obviously this is only one single arrow. You wouldn't want to draw just one single arrow on the canvas. In the next section we'll see how you can draw multiple arrows, but right now I'll focus on the other shapes, how we can draw single other shapes like circle, free drawing, and rectangle, and then we'll get back to how we can draw multiple shapes, and that is pretty easy. Right now let's see how I can draw a rectangle. Now this is the code for showing a rectangle. I've got a rectangle state just like I had a state for arrow. I've got the Konva React component, which is basically a name change from the React component, which is imported from Konva, and here I have the XY coordinates, so basically where the rectangle would start from, then the height and width, so whatever the height and width of the calendar would be, stroke, the color of the border, ID just for keeping track of whatever the rectangle is, and then I have the stroke width, the width of the border. And now I'll use the same logic to draw a rectangle as well. So I would want that whenever I put the mouse down, I set the X and Y to whatever place I had, and then based on the mouse position I change the height and width. Pretty easy. I will say here that I want to select the rectangle state. It would be ID, it would be a dummy ID for now, then I will have the color, then X and Y from here, and then basically height and width. So height right now would be 1, width would be 1 because I've just started painting the rectangle. So obviously I just want to draw a small rectangle. There should be some height and width so that we can see something on the canvas. Here on the move function, I will mutate the height and width based on wherever my mouse position is. So I will say prev rectangle, then I will spread the prev rectangle, and I will only change the height and width. So I will say height should be equal to y minus prev rectangle dot y, and then width would be x minus prev rectangle x. So this would basically be my triangle. Now if I select the rectangle component, you can see that I can draw a rectangle. Now this is basically the circle component we have imported from Konva. Now for the circle component, we have all the props which are similar to the rectangle prop, but this one is the prop which is different, and this is the radius prop. So basically a circle doesn't have a height and width, it has a radius, and the radius defines the size of the circle. So X and Y would basically be the origin. So when we click on the stage, that is where we would set the X and Y, and that would be the origin of the circle. And slowly as we drag away from that origin, we would use the new X and Y coordinates to calculate the radius of the circle, and that would basically create the circle. Now let's get into the handler function for that. So here I would say set circle to, let's for instance, for now it would be id1, color, x, y, and then here it would be the radius. So for now I would set the radius to 1. Now here in the move function we would set the radius. So we would set the radius by using the distance function. So we'll say x minus prev circle dot x, and we would square it. Then we would say y minus prev circle dot y, we would square it, and then we would take the square root for it. So for that I would say 0.5. So that is basically the square root of it, and using this function we would be able to draw the circle. Now if I select the circle tool and I basically drag around, you can see that now I can draw a circle. Pretty cool. Now let's write the code for scribbling or free drawing. Now this line component we get from Konva is basically used for scribbling. So you can see we have two different props as compared to the previous component. So line cap and line join, basically these tell how round the line should be. So it should be round, it should be rectangular, etc. We want the line to be round because we are free drawing. So we would pass round to these two props, then the stroke color, then stroke width, and this is the main prop. So we saw a points prop in the arrow component as well, but that only allowed 4 values. So the 2 starting coordinates, 2 ending coordinates. In the points prop of line component, because this is a free drawing line, we can literally go anywhere. This points would contain an endless supply of xy coordinates. So xy, 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 and based on those xy points, we would get a line. So this is what we would use to scribble basically. Now let's write the code for on mouse down for this. So here I would say set scribble to be id should be dummy1, there should be color, and then there should be points. So points would be, for now it would be xy, and then as I drag the mouse I would append the x and y of whatever my current mouse position is to the points, and we'll see it in the next step. Now here I would say points. So points should be the previous points. So whatever the previous points are, I would spread them and I would append the new xy here. So now I would be able to scribble as well. So now if I select the scribble tool, now you can see that I can free draw, and it's a very smooth line. I can literally draw anything I want. I can, draw a house, let's say. Pretty cool. But now obviously you can see that any shape I want to draw, I can only draw one particular shape, and that is obviously not a good paint application. We want to draw as many different types of shapes as we want. We can do that by having an array for each particular shape type and appending the state of that to that array whenever we want to draw a new shape. So let's make a change for one shape, and then I will replicate that change for all shapes, and then you would understand. Let's start doing it for the arrow. So I will say arrows, set arrows. I will set the type to arrow array, and then I will set the initial value to an empty array, and then at the bottom where I've rendered the arrow component, I would say arrows.map arrow, and then I'll basically make it a function. So now I can render many arrows. Now that is done. Now I want to change the code I wrote in case of onstage mouse down and onstage mouse move. So let's change that. One important point, I want to keep track of what particular shape I am drawing. So whenever I would place the mouse down, I would create a UUID, and then whenever I'm moving the mouse, I would know that for that particular shape which has that UUID that I just created for mouse down, I want to append the XY coordinates to that particular shape, not to any other shape. So basically we'll use a ref for having a unique ID, and then we will use that particular ID to append the X and Y coordinates to the particular shape, and you will see how. So this is the current shape ref, right? So I'll say current shape ref dot current is equal to UUID. So UUID is basically a library which is used to generate unique IDs. So now I've got an ID, pretty cool. Now you can see that initially when I was rendering only one item, I was assigning a dummy ID because it was just one shape. Now I'm rendering multiple shapes. So when I place the mouse down, I will create a UUID. Let's take it to variable so that I can assign it to the shape as well. So I would do that. This ID would go here, and now this ID would go here as well. But obviously now I have an array state, not an object. So let's change that. So I will say set arrows, prev arrows, and prev arrows would be an array. So I would basically append this new object in the array. So I would say prev arrows, and I would append the new object here. Now here in this move function, I would basically want to append these new coordinates to the shape which has that ID which was set when I placed my mouse down. So what I would do is I would first of all do set arrows, prev arrows. I would say prev arrows dot map prev arrow, and then prev arrow dot id is equal to current shape ref dot current. If it is equal to the current ID, which means I would want to return this particular object. I would want to return this object, otherwise I would want to return the prev arrow object which I'm getting. So this is what I want. Basically I am mapping the prev arrows. I'm saying if the prev arrow ID is equal to the current ID of the shape I'm drawing, then append the points to that. Otherwise for any other arrow, just return the object as is. I don't want to append my current coordinates to that particular arrow. So now you can see that I can draw multiple arrows, and also I can change color. So now I can basically draw arrows with different props. Pretty cool. Now I will basically use the same logic for all the other shapes. I won't bore you with the details, the logic, and I would see you in the next slide. Now basically I've applied the same logic to all the other shape types. So for scribbling, for circle, rectangle, now the states are an array. For on stage mouse down, the state are an array as well. I'm using the ID to keep track of what particular object I want to edit. And now I can draw multiple arrows, I can draw multiple scribbles, I can draw multiple circles, and I can draw multiple rectangles. Now I want to add the logic for this cross button. So what I want is when I click on the cross button, I want to raise the canvas so that if a user wants to draw something else, he made a mistake, he can do that. The logic for this is pretty simple. What I would do is when I click on the clear button, I would reset the state for all the shapes. So I would reset them. I would set them to an empty array, for all the states. Pretty easy. So here I have the onClear function which would be called when I would click on that button. So I would basically do this, set let me copy this multiple times, set circles, set scribbles, set arrows, and then I would like to set the image to undefined. So now I have all this bunch of stuff. I will click on this cross button. Now everything is gone, and I'm implementing the clear canvas function as well. Now I would want to have the functionality of selecting a particular shape and then doing stuff with it, like dragging it or resizing it, etc. That can easily be done using Konva as well. I would like to show that. So for selecting, I have the select tool. So I would want that when I click on any shape and the select tool is selected, I want to select that particular shape. So let's implement that. The component responsible for the selection of a particular component and then doing stuff with it, like transforming functions like resizing or rotation and stuff like that, those can be done using the transformer component. Now the transformer component has a ref. Now what I would want is whenever I click on a particular shape, I add that particular node, whatever that shape is, to the transformer. So now I would be able to perform transforming operations on that particular shape, and you'll see it in a bit. Each shape, whether it is a line, circle, etc., has an onClick function. So now in this onClick function, I can get the details about that particular node and I can do stuff with it. I have a function on shape click and I will write the code for it, and this would be generic function. So I would pass this everywhere. Now this is the function here. So first of all, I would want that if I click on a shape and the select tool is not enabled, I don't want to do anything, because maybe I have a circle, I want to draw another circle on top of it. I don't want that this function gets invoked when I don't have the select tool selected. So first I would say if draw action is not equal to draw action dot selected, then return, don't do anything. Otherwise I would want to get the current target, and I would say e dot current target. That is how I can get the current target. Then I would get the transformer ref. This is the ref that I passed in the transformer. I would say transformer ref current node, and then I would pass the current target here. So basically this would select it, and you will see it in a bit. Now I have drawn a circle. I select the select tool. Now I click on the circle, and now you can see that there is a bounding box which is covering the circle, and it has handles which you see in vector software and etc. Now I can do stuff with the circle. I can make the size bigger and smaller. I can rotate it and do stuff which you can do in normal vector applications, and you were able to do that with literally 2-3 lines of code. Nothing fancy. You don't have to interact with the Canvas API at all. This is the power of this library. So now that is done. Now I want that I have the ability to drag the shapes around. I have created a shape, but now I would want that I can drag it around in some other place. So how can I do that? I can do that very easily as well with just one line of code, and we'll see how. Every shape that we have has a draggable prop as well, and I've passed it to true to show you how it works. So now you can see that I can drag it. Now what I want is, I want the draggable prop. I will pass the draggable prop to every component, shape component, and I want that when the select tool is selected, then I am able to select them. I don't want again that I am drawing on a particular shape and it starts moving. Obviously that would be weird. So I would only want to make the shapes draggable when the select tool is selected. So I would basically make a variable and then pass the variable in these particular components. So here I would say const is draggable is equal to draw action is equal to draw action dot select. So I only want to make the shapes draggable when it is true. So I would say draggable is equal to is draggable, and I would copy it to every shape. Now I'm able to drag it. Pretty cool. I draw an arrow. I am able to click on it and drag it. Now another thing is that I am able to select a particular shape, but I'm not able to deselect it. So if I click on the background, it doesn't deselect. When I click on another shape, then it gets deselect and the particular shape which I clicked on gets selected. But I want the ability to deselect when I click on the background. So I would say that when I click on this particular rectangle, then I would get the transformer ref and I would pass an empty node to it so that the selection goes away. So basically for this rectangle component, I have passed an onClick and I have set it to onBGClick. Now this onBGClick is a function. I'm saying that when I click on onBGClick, I should set the current transformer reference node to an empty array. So basically I am saying that it shouldn't select anything. So now I have an arrow here. I click on it, I select the arrow, I click on the background, the selection goes away. So now this is how normal paint applications or vector applications work. So this is another cool behavior. So now this is it for the features. Let's draw a particular shape and then export it. So let's try to make an house. So I will use the scribble tool to make a house, and then I will export it. So I can use the rectangle tool to make the door, and then I will use the circle component to make this circle, just like houses have. And then let's import an image. So I can import the image of a Pikachu, and then I can I forgot to make the image draggable. So I will say draggable is equal to is draggable. So I would basically drag the Pikachu here or here, whatever, and then I'll export it. And now you can see that I have this beautiful drawing that I created using React. So that's it for this paint application tutorial. I hope you learned a lot from it. If you want a tutorial with many advanced features like undoing, clicking on a particular shape and deleting that shape, and many things like dragging the canvas around, panning, zooming in, zooming out, I have another application project with me which has a lot of these features. So if you want an advanced React paint application tutorial, drop a comment and tell me that you want that tutorial, and then I will make an advanced React paint application tutorial as well. As far as this tutorial goes, if you like the tutorial, smash the like button so that I can feel more motivated to make more videos, and share it with your friends. As always, support the channel, like the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.